But yeah, I know we're at time. It's time to wrap this thing up. So let me ask you my final question. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad we got to chat today, and I hope that when the next book comes out, we'll do it again.
Absolutely.
I've got more questions for you. Are you well? You know, 2 questions. I'm gonna cheat. Are you thinking that it's gonna be fantasy pretty much from here on out, as far as the eye can see, or do you have other genres that you're still yearning to write books in?
I actually, after having written my first couple of books, I actually wrote nothing but YA science fiction, dystopian and straight sci-fi, and I have a huge heart for it. But in the end, it was just at the time a harder market to break into. And fantasy is my first love anyway. It's what I cut my teeth on. I was reading Catherine Kurtz in 7th grade, Terry Brooks, just love that old school fantasy stuff. And but for some reason, it takes more out of me to write it. And sci-fi, which I almost never read, I only like to watch. I'm a huge Star Trek Next Generation nerd. And, I just love, give me a good sci-fi movie anytime. But I don't really read it, but I love to write it. So I would love to be able to do both. I'd love to be able to continue to write fantasy, but I'd also like to branch back into the sci-fi world because I really just love it so much. I love writing it.
Well, it seems close enough that there could be enough crossover from your fan base that you'd hopefully be all right.
I think so too. I hope so. But for now, I'm definitely staying with YA fantasy for at least the next couple of books.
And here's my lazy catch-all question for all the things that you could have told me if I just thought to ask you and didn't. If there were some advice that you could go back and you could give yourself all those years back when you began writing and began blogging, that would have made a significant difference, that maybe would have made your path easier, in the hopes that all the soon-to-be Jillian Boehme's listening could take that advice and maybe get a head start, shave off a couple of years, what would you go back and tell yourself?
That's a hard question because I'm so thankful for my journey. Even though it was so ridiculously long, I'm thankful for how I grew through it.
Well, you say that, but there's somebody that's been at this for 40 years right now saying, screw off.
Well, honestly, and I think we probably all need reminders of this all the time, is to stop the comparisons inside my head. Especially for somebody who is in my position running a blog with an active and vibrant writers community, a lot of whom went on to get agents while I sat there. And we have a Facebook group of our success stories from the blog. There are 60 authors on there who found their agents on my blog, either directly or indirectly. So it's very cool. And that was very exciting for me as a blogger, not necessarily exciting for me as an aspiring author. I have
been there and felt that pain.
I think, haven't we all, right? It's hard. You want to encourage and be excited, and you are. But then there's that part of you that dies a little bit every time it happens.
And Ninja helped me find an agent. Oh, good for you. Wish it would help me find an agent.
Good for you, buddy. So, yeah, and I even had one of my success story. This is such a lovely tale. He published his debut. It was a young adult fantasy novel, and unbeknownst to me, he mailed me a copy, and he wrote a beautiful note on the inside, signed it, thanking me for the role that I had played in his journey. And here I am holding this book, from somebody. It was amazing, and I was so honored, that he did that. But there's still that part where, your eyes fill with tears and you're like, always a bridesmaid, never a bride, just. So I think I might take 10-year-ago me and just pat her on the shoulder and say, okay, look, you're doing good work here in the blogging community. Step back, just step back and write and do your writing. Give yourself permission to feel the feels, but don't spend so much time in your head making the comparisons and lamenting, because that just causes angst. And angst, as you know, gets in the way of our creative process. So probably 10-year ago me could have used a little more of that sort of advice.
When you get that time machine, you swing by Indiana, you tell me to.
Honey,
We'll be all right.
we'll go back together.